it's better that you.
Good evening, everyone. Just going to let a few people come on in here before we get started. Start in about a minute. Okay, 6:01. I think let's get started. I'd like to call to order the Select Board Short-Term Rental Subcommittee meeting for Tuesday, June 18th at 6:01 p.m. Tonight's agenda is public comment for all those who would like to speak. Comment will be limited to 3 minutes, and we ask you, if you are going to comment, that you list your Zoom name as your actual name. If you don't, if you're just here on Zoom, it's fine to be listed as something else. But if you do comment, we ask that you put your name. And with that, I would entertain any hands going up, and then I will keep time and sort of moderate from there, if necessary. And yeah, so show of any hands, and I will go in order that Zoom does it. Zoom keeps track of who raises their hands, and I will do it that way. Or we will do it that way. Nobody wants to go first?
Motion to adjourn.
Dies for lack of a second, Stephen. Yes, Mr. Halley.
Thanks. I just want to break the ice. I, on behalf of the non-voting taxpayers, I previously submitted 2 memos, which are in the packet today, and I am assuming that the comments that you're calling on are primarily on the new information in the packet toward the end, which would be the comparative, or not the compromise proposal. And I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you to all of you who have been instrumental in pulling this together. I think that compromise proposal, as far as it goes, and I understand it may not be complete, is a very, very good proposal. And so that is something that certainly those of us without a vote can support. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Tom, Carolyn Bolton has her hand up.
Thank you, Denise. Just saw it. Yes, Caroline, go ahead.
Thanks. I've been very curious to know how and when the committee is going to be speaking to the data that was collected last year for the previous short-term rental work group. I have attended all the meetings, but I haven't heard much reference to the data. And I'm extremely eager to hear how the regulations, especially the newly proposed ones, are referencing it, since the data is the strongest evidence that we have of what the problems are. Thank you.
Caroline, I think we'll kind of hold questions unless their member of the committee has anything it's truly concrete answer, or myself can answer. And we'll either answer that on Thursday, or we'll figure it out to try and get you answer that. But I guess I would just briefly say that these are citizen warrant articles, and so I'm sure that they've taken into account data when they've. I don't want to speak for them, but I'm not exactly sure what the right way to go with that. But I hear you. Follow up, Caroline, since there's no other hands.
Thank you. I'll take the opportunity to convert it into a more answerable question.
Okay.
Since the select board will be sponsoring the compromise, I am wondering if the members of the select board who are on this committee, if they have looked at the data and encouraged the citizens to map their articles onto the data, since I know it has been a problem in the past when citizens write articles. If it isn't something that can pass or is applicable, it makes it hard to pass a town meeting.
Okay, I got your question now. Malcolm.
Yeah, to partially answer that question, I know Charities at some point in these deliberations had mentioned that data. She was challenged on it. So like every bit of data, there's always a challenge, but it has been in some of the discussions so far, and certainly it will be at the end, and the select board will take that into account when they look at the final versions. Thank you.
Mr. Delano, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. Always good to be with you. Thank you, everybody, for the work that you've been doing on this. Frankly, I just came home, so I am not aware of what this compromise is all about. Could I request, on behalf of those of us who work during the day, that somebody just in 2 minutes, maybe Stephen Cohen could do this, just very briefly tell us what's new and different about this. I've been trying to attend all the other hearings as best I could, but I haven't seen this compromise. I know it's posted now in the agenda, but I'd like someone to articulate for those of us who are oral receivers of information, some idea what this is all about.
John, if I might, we have one more meeting on Thursday, where it will be the last one before if a potential article goes to the select board for consideration on the 26th before the warrant, we close the warrant. So I think there'll be ample time to see that. I'm more than happy to email you that. John was on the short-term rental work group with me. I'm more than happy to email you that so you can take a look at that.
I appreciate that, Tom, but I can't comment during the comment period without knowing what it is I'm commenting on. So I think it would be very helpful if somebody could take 2 minutes and just explain what this compromise is all about. I'm sure Jim could do it. He's very artful in his words, Jim Seltzer, or any of the members of the short-term rental group. But I don't understand I don't know exactly what's in there. And I don't know 7 weeks or, shoulder seasons are fine. I don't know what's in there. So I'm just requesting if it's possible.
Yeah, I would just hesitate because it's still a fluid situation. I mean, if any members of want to take a quick stab at just generally what we've been talking about, but I think it's still kind of fluid. So I wouldn't want to.
I'm not holding anybody to
Yeah.
it. I just want to know what the compromise, the proposed compromise is. That's all.
Tom, I'm willing to take a bird's eye view of that if you want. Just
There we go.
I don't, John, I don't think there's any agreement on the details that you're asking about, but I think the concepts that we seem to be focusing around are creating two kinds of short-term rentals, one that would be unlimited, that would be prohibited in all districts, and one that would be regulated, that would be allowed in most districts. We seem to be focusing on the concept of using changes in occupancy as a tool to both dissuade investor-focused STRs and also to limit the impacts on neighborhoods. So that tool has both impacts. And if you have less changes in occupancy for new people and more for people who have been here a little longer, that's the concept we seem to be working with there. There is an idea about suggesting that certain kinds of dwellings, like tertiary dwellings, affordable housing, shouldn't necessarily have short-term rentals in them. And I think, those are probably the main points. Let me look at my notes here. We basically have gotten away from the idea of regulating the shoulder season. We've gotten away from the idea of, counting how many nights to sleep in the house in the off season. We've talked about having an exemption for hosted stays because those are sort of necessarily different. We're obviously talking about increasing penalties and tying in the Board of Health rules and having people have real penalties like losing their certificate of registration as an enforcement mechanism that doesn't exist. I think that probably covers the concepts, but I don't want to say that there's unanimity in that, and there certainly isn't on the number of things that we're talking about.
Thank you, Stephen. That's exactly what I needed, and I understand the details are yet to be worked out then. Tom, I'll go to the end of the line. I'd like to make a comment or two when you're ready for me.
No, but there are no other hands, John. So please, if you want to, I'll give you your time now.
Yeah. Well, very briefly, first of all, I want to thank everybody. I want to thank the select board members, Malcolm and Tom, for the work they're doing, and then all those of you who participated. I know many of you from I was an at-large alternate to the short-term rental working group, which meant I had no voice and I had no vote. But I was at all the meetings and tried my best to learn and understand what was going on. I am a 45-year property owner on Nantucket, having bought my house on Nantucket in 1979. It is absolutely essential for me. It has always been essential for me to engage in some short-term rental. We use the house. We're at the house from time to time. But as a working person, there was no way I could ever be at the house as many days as we rent. I know that was a proposal that was out there, but I don't think that's alive at the moment. And the fact is that if you are a working person, you don't get enough weeks of vacation that equal to the number of weeks that you rent. It's just impossible. Now that I'm very close to retirement, I'll spend more time on Nantucket. Who knows, I might even become a resident and vote for a couple of these select board folks who are on here. But at the moment, at least, we are dependent on renting for at least part of the summer. And I thought the 7-week notion was a good one. I think we can live with that because there's 9 to 10 weeks during that period of time. One of the things that does concern me, however, that really concerns me, is the overcomplication of rules and regulations governing those who are engaged in short-term rentals. I think that some of the proposals that were made, with respect to lighting, with respect to other kinds of requirements, should apply to everybody on Nantucket, not just me, not just those who engage in short-term rentals, but to everybody. And so if it's good enough for the short-term rental owner, it's good enough for the whole island itself. And why there's a discriminatory or discrimination against those who engage in short-term rentals, I don't understand. I've never had a complaint in 45 years of renting to mostly friends and people I know. I've never had a complaint about the rentals. And some of these regulations strike me as a little severe, and particularly if not including the whole island. I really think that if it's good enough for some, it's good enough for all. But beyond that, I think that the effort of finding a compromise is a good one, and I want to salute all of you for what you're doing, and thank you again for the efforts. And I particularly want to thank the folks on the non-voting taxpayers group, because I think the notion of being very careful about discrimination against those of us who love Nantucket as much as anybody who's on the island all the time. We do not want to have anything that discriminates against us. And I appreciate the work that Peter and others do to keep on top of this stuff. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it, Tom. Nice to see all you guys.
Thanks, John. 3 minutes on the dot. Right on cue. Good job. Good work. Mr. Herlihy.
He's muted.
Can you hear me? Can you
Yes,
hear
sir.
me now?
Yep.
Okay. Mr. Dixon and colleagues, let me begin by triple endorsing what John just said. The work that you have done for over the last not only 4 weeks, but 4 years has been particularly useful for the community. And I have to say my own feeling about the subject matter has evolved. But I'm not making a comment tonight to ask for any particular consideration except for the name of the special use category that you put in the zoning article. I think it would be very valuable to have that name reflect the tradition of Nantucket community rentals and its evolution by this legislation and this dialogue over the last 4 years. Something like Nantucket community rentals or Nantucket community vacation rentals. We could actually say that we are prohibiting STRs on Nantucket, but we're encouraging our traditional community rental practice that's been longstanding. And we're adapting it to today's needs with a much larger population on the island, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I like it because it's simple. It separates zoning, any confusion over primary and secondary use, both legislatively and importantly conversationally in preparing for the annual meeting. I could see something growing out of this where we do something like we did with the whole the gray shingle episode from the 1970s forward, expanded outward. And we wrote this book called Building with Nantucket in Mind. We could put a lot of this into renting with Nantucket in mind and start to market the way we'd like to see the welcome the behavior and make clear that we're hanging our sign out that corporate exploitation or investor-only exploitation of our island is undesired and will be turned down at every corner. So we've conquered these things. I would just suggest to you and to John Giorgio to think about giving it a label that we can use to help get consensus both in the community and separate ourselves from a national dialogue in STRs. It's only going to get worse. Thanks very much, and thanks again for all of your good work.
Thanks, Mike. Any other hands? Yes, in order, Mr. O'Connor.
Hi, Mrs. O'Connor. I would like to follow up on an email that I sent everyone a week or two ago about instituting a code of conduct for rentals. And rather than being punitive and limiting to both the vacation home owner that's renting the home and the families that may rent those homes, if we hold our owners to a code of conduct where they control the behavior of their renters, the issues that short-term rentals, the problem issues that short-term rentals face would be mitigated. Personally, I I have my renters sign a rental agreement that in which they agree to uphold quiet hours, honor our trash practices, things of that nature. We could expand upon this and create an island-wide code of conduct. And then this would allow renters, or sorry, homeowners to rent for whatever suits their needs. Personally, I love a week-long renter, but this season, for example, I have 11 or 12 leases, all short-term, 2 to 3 days and 1 8-day, because the market has dictated that people's budgets can't afford a week-long rental in Nantucket or many other places. So rather than placing restrictions, let's hold renters and homeowners alike accountable to a higher code of ethics.
Thank you, Ms. O'Connor. Ms. Duez.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for taking public comments. I've been on both sides of the Nantucket vacation rental equation. We rented our house when I was growing up, and until I bought a house 15 years ago, I was an enthusiastic renter for many years. My guess is my kids will have to rent when they inherit. Vacation rentals have always been a part of Nantucket. Visitors love to be able to rent homes, and homeowners love to rent for a variety of reasons. But what hasn't been a part of Nantucket until the last 10 years or so is treating Nantucket residential real estate as an asset class to be milked to the nth degree. This is done by individuals, groups, and faceless investors in a variety of legal structures, including, but certainly not limited to, corporations. This is what threatens Nantucket and Nantucket's neighborhoods. Threatens in so many insidious ways what we all love about Nantucket: its character, its charm, its quirkiness, its sense of being and happiness it offers to those who love it. The list is long. I urge you to respect our current zoning code and focus on sticking with our time-honored tradition of vacation rentals as an accessory use of a property that is actually lived in by a family. Only this will prevent the inexorable creep of Nantucket residential real estate being owned as an asset class rather than a family treasure. Matt Fee said it: the highest and best use of Nantucket residential real estate is as an STR. That's where we're going. I'm sympathetic to those who have to rent to keep a house and hope that there are measures that can be implemented to allow for real hardships to be considered. But I'm also sympathetic to those whose summer existence has been ruined by the STR next door, those who can no longer afford to live on Nantucket because existing homes and new building are being oriented to the STR market, those who no longer have neighbors. Please take the accessory use of Nantucket vacation rentals as your guiding star. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Duez. Caroline, if it's okay with you, I'm gonna allow a little while before I take repeat comments. Is that okay? Okay, if you can come back, and I'll just wait for some other hands. Karen.
Hi, Karen Zagayko, former short-term rental work group member. I've been watching all of this time continue the work, and just want to thank you for all the time and effort that you're putting in. Just a couple quick comments. I think that just keep working towards simplicity, because I think in hindsight, that was one of the things that really made it difficult for the voters to understand what was going on. And so kind of trying to always say, is this layer also necessary in addition to the ones we have? I think that's an important kind of guideline to keep in mind. It seems like you guys are really on the right track for coming up with something that could be very good. I do think the changes of occupancy is a great method for discouraging people who don't have a connection to the island from investing, because it makes it really hard. I think the one question I have is about kind of the numbers. My family has been coming to Nantucket since the 40s, and we have 5 generations now who have worked and love the island, but we have had to rent since my grandfather passed away in 2008. And we probably don't rent more than 6 times, so this doesn't concern me so much, but I'm concerned about the effects of where you set that bar on the economy in general, and just you know, for local businesses and so forth. It seems like Matt Heffenreffer had told us that putting it at 9 would result in a decrease of about 5% over what had previously happened. And so I don't know what the data might show as to if you use 6 or 7 or 3 or 4, but I think that's a question that it might be interesting to see if we could get some data to understand what that impact could be. So thanks, and I'm rooting for you. Thanks.
Thanks, Karen. Before any other hands, Caroline, do you have a comment or a question?
Thank you. I would like to share, if no one else is speaking, a couple of thoughts I had about some of the new proposals, just thinking about unintended consequences. And these may not be something as important to consider, but just as public comment. One of them I noticed was to require hedges or fences for just STR owners or properties. And I was sad to read that, because I know in some neighborhood or area plans, they require sight lines or view sheds to be respected. And I had cousins visiting this past weekend. They haven't been here since 2015, and they noted how many hedges and fences had gone up in our area since they had lived here. And it was really shocking to them. And it wasn't something I had appreciated until they pointed it out. So I agree with John Delano that by requiring only short-term rental properties to have that, it's sort of like a demarcation, which I don't think is very Nantucket-y. I also think that it may go against some area plans. So just to keep that in mind. And I'm also thinking that it's very nice to be able to speak to your neighbor over what we used to call a sconset hedge, which was only 3 feet tall, as opposed to other areas of the island where I guess we had taller hedges. But I always think of it as a very friendly and neighborly attribute of Nantucket. It would be sad for this group to require that go away. And finally, I would just say, I do know a lot of Nantucketers myself who have had town homes and then country homes, like they'll live in Mattocket in the summer and they'll have an in-town house when their kids are in school. And those people some of them still have those 2 dwellings. And I noticed that the proposal to limit people to more than 1 only if it's on a contiguous lot. So that would wipe out a lot of traditional people that I know personally. And I was wondering if the group had considered that. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. Mr. Mandel.
Thank you very much. There are quite a few letters to the committee in the packet, and we've just had some very interesting comments from some citizens. And rather than just say thank you very much for your comments, I would be interested to find out what Steve, Charity, and Grant think about the comments that were made and were submitted in the packet, rather than just close the page on the public comments.
Bruce, I think what we're going to do on Thursday is in the beginning of the meeting, I will give each of the groups a chance to respond to public comment tonight. So that could be an opportunity for any of the groups to relay what they think on that.
Well, that sounds like a plan. Hopefully they will respond to the comments either negatively or positively, or that's something we should consider and give it some time. So it'll be interesting to hear that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. or Mrs. Vidoni?
Hi, this is Bob speaking. Virginia is here. First of all, like the others that have spoken, I'd like to thank you all for taking your time and dedicating so much energy to trying to work towards a compromise that I hope can be achieved. My question really follows up Carolyn's, and I hadn't quite thought about it, is we live on 3 acres in Quidnet. We short-term rent. We have no problems. In fact, Mr. Hurley, he's our neighbor. Is these ordinances that require hedges and these type of things, are they going to apply to somewhere with 3 acres? And that brought another thought is, isn't zoning by different areas possibly an option where, you know, the historic district is one type of short-term rental with close-in neighbors and neighborhoods, and then you have people out in the country like us. And it just occurred to me that one size doesn't fit all in this. So that was my question. Thank you. Good luck with it.
Thank you. Mr. Balkan?
Can you hear me, Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Oh, great. Well, my name is Burton Balkine. Some of you might know me as Spruce. Honestly, I'm not very well versed and much about short-term rentals. I have listened to your meetings that you guys have been debating some of the points and going through the town council's recommendations. I guess what I want to say is I see you guys drilling down, as you have to, into the minutia of the different terminologies and getting really into the sausage making, let's say, of it. And my comment is that it seemed like everyone has a common sense idea of what we want and what we don't want. But when we're drilling down, it seems like that's when we're getting into the consensus losing instead of consensus making. And I'm going to make a suggestion that's based on nothing other than my own opinion, so you can take it for what it's worth. But I feel like if there's some way that the this could be part of this could be made into some kind of board or some kind of overseer or somebody that could somebody that could vet each individual case. It's because it seems like to me that you can't, if you drill down, you're not going to be able to cover all the different scenarios you want. But if you had a set of guidelines and somebody or a committee or a board that could actually look at each individual case and say, listen, this family's been here for 10 years, even though they have 12 rentals, that's the way we want to rent. Or this person's only renting 3 weeks, but they're an entity that's never on the island. So I guess I'm just trying to find a way for you guys to find some consensus. I don't know if that will work or not, but it just, I've been thinking about it and I wanted to bring it up and here, and then I'd feel more comfortable if I brought it up too at the town meeting. So thank you for listening to my thoughts, and I appreciate all the work you guys are doing.
Thank you, Spruce. I would just briefly comment that that's something that was in the short-term rental work group deliberations, because it's very difficult to cover every Nantucket case. So I wouldn't be surprised if something like that came back up in the future. So it's a good point, and thank you for your comment. Any other hands? Mr. Kokot.
Sorry, I was muted.
Yep.
Hi, I thank you for the opportunity to put in my 2 cents on the issue. I've followed the short-term rental work group very, very closely and thought they did a great job with a very complex conundrum issue here that's still ill-defined, but I thank you all for picking up the baton here and trying to get it over the finish line. I guess my concern comes from my conversations with uh, the folks who depend upon short-term rentals during July and August for the bulk of their income and their jobs. And I'm talking about the woman who cleans my house and the guys who mow my lawn and the fishing charter captain who I was out with 2 weeks ago, who says this summer tourism season is my business. Without it, I leave the island. And so my concern comes down to how you folks are going to, between now and next week sometime, decide on some number of changes of occupancy that is correct. And I use correct because I think it's a very important word. Because as I go back to the short-term rental work group, and not to repeat what Karen said, but I will, I believe the work group said 9 leases or changes of occupancy during the summer would represent about a 5% hit to the beds available for tourists. And I think that there's some evidence in the data that the number 8 would result in a 13% hit. And I think these numbers are extremely critical to your decision, and I hope you're going to use them in making that decision, because we're talking about numbers from 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I think the bottom line needs to become data-based, and what is the potential impact on the jobs on the island of those who depend on the short-term rental. So I'd encourage you to work as hard as possibly you can to come up with the right number. And for my 2 cents, and based on my 40 years here of watching rentals and renting off and on myself, I would advocate that that number be placed at 8. And I thank you very much.
3 minutes on the dot. Good. Very good. Thank you, Mr. Kokot. Any other hands? I'm going to go to Ms. Mills.
Hello, this is actually Ed Mills. My wife is here, Kimberly. My family has been property owners in Nantucket for almost 100 years. We've been both renters and summer rental providers for, going back to the 40s. And I believe this island is, since the whaling days, really been dependent on tourism, and I would rather see the tourists live in houses than hotels. And that's one of the reasons the island is so beautiful, is the people that come here actually are living in houses. And I want to emphasize that word, living in houses. They're all residential users, whether they're here for a day or for a week or for a month, or they live here all the time. And so short-term rentals, whatever you want to call it, summer rentals, to me, are no different than any other person who lives in a house, takes a shower, cooks dinner, does what people do in houses. Those are sort of high-level comments, but the one that I really wanted to focus on is, through this multi-year effort, it seems like we fail when we get too complicated in what we present to the town for decision. And so I really would like to encourage this group in the end to come up with recommendations that could fit on like a 3x5 card. Super simple, easy to understand, easy to implement, and easy to police, whatever the right word is, on the back end. So keep it as simple as possible. Thank you all for all your time, tons of work, and I hope we can get this over the finish line this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. I'm guessing Mrs. Vidoni would like to comment. Go to.
I will continue to speak. I just wanted to follow up on Ron's comment about the number of weeks in July and August, understanding, that we have friends in the business community, and there is also a concern of the effect on our cleaning people and our caretaker and landscapers. For us, a number not less than 8 seems reasonable. So I just wanted to say that. And the other comment is, it doesn't appear that anyone on the committee is a member of the non-voting taxpayers. It doesn't seem to be a seat at the table for any of us. And we feel we are definitely a part of this community after 25 years. And our experience renting has been nothing but positive, with wonderful people coming back year after year, great neighbor, Mr. Hurley. But I think there's a sense of being stuck back in the audience on the other side of a fence. And it's not comfortable. It's not comfortable feeling like an outsider. I don't know what the solution is for that or what the rules are, but there are many people who are ready, willing, and able to participate in trying to come to a positive solution here. We support reasonable regulations. We understand noisy neighbors. In Pennsylvania, we have one that's not a short-term rental, whose pool parties are pretty outrageous. And our only solution is to call the police after 10 o'clock. I understand if that's next door to you, it's a problem. But as other people have said, the regulations and enforcement of the existing bylaws and new tougher ones, I feel would be a much better way to try and control people. That's it. Thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Vidoni. Just a clarification on process. So this isn't exactly a committee. These are 3 citizen warrant article petitioners, or there are three zoning petitioners and 3 general bylaw petitioners. And the select board decided that each representative from each article would have, we would allow 2 speakers to come and represent their articles in endeavor to find consensus and to possibly come up with a consensus article that the select board could support at our June 26th meeting, and when we close the warrant, and then that would go through the process, and and then the citizen warrant articles would either go to town meeting floor, or they might agree to take a negative recommendation, or et cetera, et cetera. That whole process is fluid. So I would just say that the members of this committee weren't exactly appointed like the short-term rental work group was. They were invited to come to, again, as I said, endeavor to find consensus for a consensus article that the select board can support and put on the warrant. So we shall see. Any other hands?
Tom,
Yes.
while you're waiting for some more hands to be raised, do you want to just describe what will happen on Thursday for the folks? Let's put it this way, what we hope will happen on Thursday?
Yeah, that's a good, I was going to do that at the end, but now seems like a good time. Thank you, Madam Chair. FinCom. So the thought for Thursday, or my thinking for Thursday, is that we will convene the subcommittee and, like I said before, allow any of the groups to respond to any public comment or any comments on the process they may have. And it will be our last meeting. We have 2 hours. Maybe we'll go over. That's possible. And we will go through the draft bylaw, zoning bylaw, and potential general bylaw that town council's been working on. And I think we will have all the groups weigh in on each provision and sort of do a straw vote and see where the consensus is. And hopefully we can get 3 out of 3 for a lot of them, or 2 out of 3. And whatever the answers are to those questions, where the consensus is, that will be submitted, quote unquote, in my word, submitted to the select board for consideration on the 26th. And the board members, the select board will consider it then on whether we're going to put that on the warrant or not. I obviously can't speak for my colleagues. I'm not sure what their thought process is on the 26th and closing the warrant, but hopefully we can find some broad-based consensus on the provisions of the draft bylaws as it were, so that article can come to us at the time and hopefully be put on the warrant and hopefully receive support.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Comment? Yes, Ms. Dolphin. You're muted, perhaps.
Sorry.
Yep. Oh, you're muted again. There you go.
How's that? Okay.
That's good.
Thank you. I know what a difficult process this is, and I see both sides. I'm a 25-year short-term rental property owner on Nantucket because we couldn't have afforded to do it otherwise. But what is surprising to me is when I talk to the people that I know that have been helping me through the years, which I couldn't do short-term rental without my caretaker, my housekeeper, my landscaper, Holgate's Laundry. What I'm surprised is when I ask them, why are you guys not participating in the short-term rental group? They aren't. And yet they will immediately say, of course, it's going to impact us if you limit short-term rentals to less than, the 8 during July and August. So I just wonder if the short-term rental group has had any feedback from like the Chamber of Commerce or anything when it comes to the actual negative impacts on the working people of Nantucket. And I don't know why they don't want to come to these meetings and speak up, but it's very difficult. I'm not even comfortable speaking up here. So maybe we're missing a whole population that feels intimidated by this process. And I would hope that the short-term rental group would kind of take them into consideration and try to encourage feedback, maybe get some Chamber of Commerce data that might indicate, how workers are going to be impacted. I don't know the solutions to any of this, and I get all sides, but I would really encourage, some thinking around the impact to the economy for local workers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Dolphin. I would just kind of reiterate what I said before, is that this process is still fluid, and these are citizen warrant article petitions, and we are trying to find consensus on where the group is to see whether there's going to be a consensus select board article. So it's a little bit in the weeds, so to speak. There will be time if there will be time on the citizen warrant articles for sure. And time if there is a consensus article for all those folks to weigh in and submit letters and speak in town meeting floor, et cetera.
Thank
I'm going to
you.
go to Ms. Yeah, thank you. I'm going to go to Ms. Molden.
Good evening. Thank you so much. I am here speaking on behalf of the Nantucket Land and Water Council. Sorry to be so late to raise my hand. Just a few thoughts to share. So we really have been approaching this issue through the lens of our mission, which is largely concerned with the long-term protection of Nantucket's environment and sustainability of our resources, and certainly are not coming at this with an opposition to all short-term rentals. We certainly recognize the importance of rentals to Nantucket and have certainly been very supportive of the idea of short-term rentals into the future, certainly as an accessory use. We have, however, been increasingly concerned with the growth of the industry and the way that has changed and the impact that that has on land use and the development and redevelopment of properties on Nantucket and the impacts that that has on our resources. I don't have specific comments tonight on the articles or the compromise. I know that that is still somewhat in flux. I certainly thank everyone that's been a part of this group that's working to come up with a solution. I do have a number of sort of more specific questions that I apologize I haven't been able to submit yet, but I will submit in writing to the group as soon as possible. They're sort of a little bit more legal in nature, and it might make more sense for the group to take a look at them and then comment on them on Thursday if that's appropriate. But I did just want to thank everyone for the work and let you know that I'll be sending along some more specific comments for your review shortly. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Mr. Kokot, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, thank you for giving me the opportunity for a second thought unrelated to my first thought. The second thought, and I'll be brief, is the several new regulations that would go under the general bylaw have been added to what you all have been doing for the last 3 meetings, things like parking and lighting and vegetation borders and stuff like that. And I think we have a great registration system that is just at the infancy of being implemented, and that we're going to learn a whole lot about short-term renting on Nantucket over the next year and 2 years. And so I would encourage you to table any additional complication to those regulations until we begin to learn what's really going on with hard factual data on the island. And I'll echo Also Bob Vidoni's comment that the differences between short-term renting on every part of the island are absolutely immense. I think a lot of the light problems, the parking problems, the vegetation border problems, they certainly exist in Midtown. They do not exist in Tom Nevers, and they do not exist in Mattakit. So I think it's important that the committee keep that in mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mandel, follow up?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to comment on the last commenters mentioning that some of these issues are of more concern, for example, in town than they are in Mattakit. And as a Mattakit resident, I want to say that the issues that he mentioned, parking, vegetational borders, and things of like that, are very important in Mattakit also. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Let's put a hand up. Stephen.
Hi, Tom. You know, I want to say, I'm sure other members of the committee have gotten the same, but I want to speak for some of the people who I think may be intimidated, because I have literally received, I don't know, dozens, if not maybe 50 to 75 emails, phone calls, texts, letters from people who feel very intimidated about participating in this kind of a process. And the overwhelming theme that I have heard is mostly local people who rely on short-term rentals as a way to, you know, make a living, make their living here. And they're worried that we're throwing out the baby with the bathwater, in the sense that if we try to be over punitive towards investors, those rules could really have a negative impact on locals. And what I keep hearing over and over and over is, you know, think about it from both perspectives, and don't forget about us. So I wanted to make sure that that comment was out there, because I must have heard it 50 times. Thanks.
Thanks, Stephen. Anyone else? Put up a hand. Okay, so I'll be here hanging out until we adjourn. So any other hands, just throw them up. I'll call on you to speak. Yes, Ms. Killen.
I just wonder if it's possible. I turned my mute off, so are you hearing me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay,
We can hear
I
you.
just
Yep.
wonder why it's necessary to do everything in the first vote. Is it possible to break the short-term rental thoughts into a couple of town meetings, do something first, get it done, then come back to it the next time and revise it or add to it? I don't know that it has to be done in one fell swoop.
Thank you. Yeah, that is something that the subcommittee has been speaking about. And I think that will be, again, I don't want to speak for the subcommittee, but I think that will be in part of the deliberations on Thursday.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Give it a minute and then maybe give a last call just in case. If anybody would like to speak. Okay. Well, I'll make a last call, give everyone about 30 seconds before I would entertain a motion to adjourn from my colleague Malcolm, before we send everyone on their evening.
I think it's, I will make a motion to adjourn. And I would just like to thank all the people that had comments. They were very helpful. We see one. Bruce.
Bruce, give us a thumbs up.
Oh, it's a thumbs up, not a hand. Okay.
So I will second that motion. All in favor? Malcolm, myself, aye. This meeting is adjourned for public comment. Thank you very much, everyone, and see you on Thursday.